This week's Parsha VaEra starts off a bit surprising. God suddenly tells Moshe about some of his names and aspects and that he will now redeem the children of Israel from Egypt. Even though this does seem to be coming from nowhere, we need to remember that our paragraph and Parsha do not occur in a vacuum. Our verses and paragraph follow the previous paragraphs, while also acting as a transition to the text that follows. It must be then that our verses are a response to that which came before it. If so, to what is God responding? Towards the end of the previous Parsha, Moshe at God's behest goes to Paro to declare, "Let my people go." Unfortunately, this did not go over too well with Paro, who as a result harshened Israel's work conditions. At this, Moshe returned to God and asked from him, "Why did you make it worse for the people? Why did you even send me?" Rashi says that God at the beginning of our Parsha was answering Moshe's accusation of, "Why did you make it worse for the people?" Rashi points out that Moshe complained to God that demanding from Paro to let the children of Israel go 3 days in the desert to worship God resulted in Israel's working conditions to be drastically worse than before. So by going to Paro, not only did nothing not happen, but Israel's situation was made dramatically worse. So much so that Israel's spirit had now been completely broken. As such, Moshe complained to God, "What was the purpose of sending me if the after would be worse than the before?" To this God answered, "V'gam ani shamati et na'akat b'nei Yisrael asher Mitzrayim mavidim otam va'azkor et beriti." Moreover, I have heard the moans of the children of Israel whom Egypt enslaves, and I have remembered my covenant. God is telling Moshe that this is part of the process. The worsening of their work conditions caused Israel to cry out, even if only silently. Hearing their suffering has reminded God that he has a covenant with Israel. The time has now come that he can finally act and fulfill his promise to Abraham. Ibn Ezra says that God at the beginning of our Parsha is answering Moshe's protest of, "Why did you even send me?" by relating to Moshe's mission. From the very beginning, Moshe was trying to avoid being God's emissary. Moshe reluctantly agreed to take it on and started out by appearing before Paro. But the result was that he seemed to be doing more harm than good. If that is what was happening, then why did God need to send him? The Egyptians could worsen Israel's conditions by themselves without needing him to even be there. To this, God answered that they are at the very beginning of the process. True, at this moment at the beginning, it's causing more pain and no one wants to listen to him. However, God needs Moshe to be his messenger to Paro. In the end, Moshe will grow and successfully come into his role just as God expects him to do. Or perhaps God was responding to Paro. When Moshe presented God's message to Paro, Paro answered him, "Who is God such that I must listen to him to send Israel? I do not know or recognize God, nor will I send Israel." In an age of polytheism, Paro rejecting and ridiculing the God of Israel was quite shocking and disgraceful. Now all will see how God will deal with Paro. Not only will Paro send Israel out to worship God as God had demanded, but Paro will even expel Israel from Egypt. Paro will learn the hard way as to who is God. Actually, all the possibilities mentioned are not mutually exclusive. They complement each other to help build a bigger picture as to what God wanted to accomplish. Like Rashi, Moshe accused God of making things worse for Israel. And like Ibn Ezra, Moshe challenged God as to why would God send him as his messenger if he was only going to make things worse for Israel. To this, God answered that the time has now come to fulfill his promises to the Avot. And in order to do this, God needed Moshe to act on his behalf, to confront and warn Paro, and be able to lead Israel out of Egypt until they would enter the land. It was darkest before dawn, but the sun would soon be rising. Shabbat Shalom.